Good morning, members, and welcome to the first meeting of the Economy and Resources Committee. Just before we start, I'd like to say how much I'm looking forward to working with you all, and this is the potentially, I would say, a very exciting and dynamic committee to be on, so you're all very welcome. This meeting is being live streamed and recording will be made available for viewing through our council website. Can I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off their videos when you are not addressing the meeting. For those of you attending virtually who wish to contribute to any items, you should write speak in the Teams chat function, and you'll be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised with the previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we can deal with the business as efficiently as possible. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or you could write leave in the Teams chat function and then join. This is required to allow us to record member presence. And please do not use the chat function for any contributions that are material to debates. We have several important reports to consider today, and I anticipate we will deal with the business in our usual efficient manner. Item 1 is the SEDERN apologies and my approval of the members' remote participation. Claire, can you provide the SEDERN and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 apologies this morning from Councillors Brodie, Slater and Walters. 2 members are attending on Teams, being Councillors Bell and Jordan. 2 members currently not present, being Councillor Carruthers and Justy, and remaining 14 all present in the hall.
Many thanks. Oh, yeah. Councillor Ingalls.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Carruthers is not present at the minute, but he's hoping to be here within the next half hour.
Thank you very much. And I do approve of members' remote participation. So, item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations they wish to make? I've got Councillor Jordan looking to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Hegman. I just want to declare an interest in agenda item 7. I work for Lawburn Housing currently.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Are you wishing to withdraw from the meeting at that point?
I could take advice on that. I'm not sure if I would need to or not. So can I take advice on that, please?
Claire?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, it's all obviously up to a particular individual member whether they wish to participate in an item or not. There are obviously items there where we're looking for nominations on the Strategic Housing Forum. The member may think that's a conflict or not. It's really up to the individual member to determine.
Thank you, Claire.
Sorry, thank you very much. I will remain in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3 is the minute of our previous meeting of the 17th of March. This is for noting only, so are we happy to note this? Thank you. And moving on to item 4, this is the delegation to Economy and Resource Committee. The report before us provides us with information on the delegation to this committee as agreed by full council in May. Claire Rogerson is here to assist if any members have any questions, and I will open the meeting to members' debate. Councillor Dryburgh.
Thanks very much, Chair. It's always the start of every meeting in a new term when we get outside bodies. And I do have a slate on behalf of the administration.
Would you like to bring that in at item 5?
Sorry. I'm at the wrong one, innit? To note that I'm happy to notice, Chair.
Thank you. So, Councillor Hislop.
Chair. Just the first bullet point in 5.1, approval of policies and strategies. That should be policies, I would take it.
Well spotted, first point for the first typo. Okay, if members are happy, we can move on to the recommendation, which is to note the remit of the Economy and Resources Committee as detailed. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, we're asked for our approval of appointments to roles and outside bodies in accordance with the Council's scheme of representation on outside bodies and to consider nominations. Again, Claire is here to assist members if we have any questions. But Councillor Dryburgh, I'll bring you in again.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'll just go back a bit. Just looking at the administration has asked for nominations coming forward for this particular item. There is a lot of outside bodies that we do at the first meetings in all of the main committees. For the Economic Leadership Group, and I'm happy to copy this and give to others if they wish, we'd propose Katie Hagman and Sean Marshall as sub. The Galloway Glens Landscape, Tony Beretti. The Industrial Communities Alliance, myself, but we'll need 2 others for that. UNESCO GSA Biosphere, Dougie Campbell. The Outdoor Access Forum, Sean Marshall. Solway Firth Partnership is Andy McFarlane, and I believe that Malcolm Johnson has put his name forward as sub for that. Supplier Development Company, Stephen Thompson. We don't have anybody for the West Regional Management Group Business Loan Scotland, but the North Channel Partnership for the SNP, Katie Hagman, for Labour, myself, Independence, Willie Scobie, and the Conservative, Andrew Giusti. The Local Employability and Skills Partnership is yourself, Chair, and Sean is the sub. And the Southern Upland Partnership, Tony Beretti, and I would propose that as a slate going forward, Chair. There are some others that need to be named and proved, but I'm happy to move that.
Thank you, Councillor Dryburgh. Would we like to take a few moments just to consider, and I don't know if we want to pass out a copy of that slate for those members that haven't seen that.
We're quite happy with that, Chair.
Are you quite happy to...
Quite happy to accept the slate.
To accept the slate. Thank you, Councillor Ingalls. So if I don't have any other nominations coming forward for those, are members happy to agree? Councillor Dryburgh.
Chair, it's just on the ones that haven't been filled. I'm just wondering if there's a process that perhaps we can, as groups discuss and then send to the appropriate officer for future.
Thank you. I mean, my understanding is that organisations can request an elected member to sit on their board or organisation in whatever capacity. We don't necessarily have to fill that, but I'll pass to Claire for any advice.
Yes, Chair, that's quite correct. The organisations here have all requested, but it's up to the Council to determine how those, or if those places are filled.
Thank you. So I would suggest that in terms of the one that is sitting empty at the moment, which is the West Regional Management Group Business Loan Scotland, if anybody is interested in taking that forward, to get in touch with myself and we can look at how that can be populated. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, maybe we can get a wee bit clarity as well, because it tells you here it meets quarterly, but it then tells you there's monthly meetings. So what is it? Is it quarterly or monthly meetings, or is it a combination of both? So it's once a month and then an extra quarterly, extra meeting. Just have that clarified when we ring the paper back.
I think we can possibly get that clarification and pass it back to members, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, so I had the slate nominated by Councillor Dryburgh. Just in terms of a seconder for that slate, did I have a seconder in the room?
Yeah, I'll second.
Councillor McFarlane, thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 6. This is on the Green Freeport and the South West Euro Gateway. This report provides us with an update on the Green Freeport bid for the ports of Cairnryan and outlines future actions to engage with the Scottish Government to develop alternative opportunities in the west of the region. I have Andy Reid, who's here to assist if any members have any questions, and Lorna Meehan is also here. But I will open it up to members' debate. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, it's hard to hide how hugely disappointed we all are, and particularly those in the West, that we're not moving forward on this bid for the ports of Cairnryan and the surrounding area to try and succeed in the Green Port application. I would still like to think that we could maybe move forward, but we'll maybe get some more detail on that from Lorna, the Director. If it's not the case that we can move forward on advice for Ernst Young and for us to recognise that, then I think we need to look at 3.10 in terms of the National Strategy for Economic Zero Region, and 3.14 in terms of what the Scottish Government are saying in creating a new enterprise zone. And it's really to get more detail on that, recognising the huge disappointment, but seeing is there an opportunity here, and it's not just aspirational, that we do need a lot more detail because the idea that we couldn't succeed on Greenport far bewilders me when there's so much land in and around Cairnryan, Stranraer and so forth. Indeed, we have an airstrip there that lands about 200 odd airplanes, small airplanes per year, and I believe it's the same in about Baldoon. So there is plenty of land to develop, and I think we've got to look at the whole west of the region and for it to affect the whole region in terms of how we move forward. So more detail on the enterprise zones and possibly dates. I know that might be hard given it's a Scottish Government initiative, but I think we should be looking for dates so that we can be ready and no fall down the way we have on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. I mean, I would absolutely echo the disappointment on this, because this is a huge opportunity for Cairnryan, and we need to make sure that the opportunity is not completely lost if we're not progressing forward with the Green Freeport. But I don't know if Andy, you wish to come in response, or Lorna. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll come in first and then I'll ask Andy to come in around the detail. You're absolutely correct, Councillor Scobie, in terms of the disappointment. The advice that we've had, which is reflected in the paper, is that we wouldn't be able to make a strong bid for the Green Freeport, and that's very much focused around the ports and the impact of that as well in terms of how we proceed. Both the landowners, the cluster of organisations, private sector businesses, both regional, local and international, are very much focused on us proceeding now to support and ask of Scottish Government to consider us as an economic zone, which has been proposed through their new National Strategy for Economic Transformation. You'll be aware that economic areas have been agreed previously by previous governments across Scotland. None of them are in the south of Scotland. We have a unique ability, I think, round about Cairnryan, but also the wider environs of the southwest of Scotland, and a unique offering there around renewables and sustainability and the just transition. So all of those organisations are interested in proceeding on that basis. And obviously government have not set out the timeline for the development of enterprise zones, nor have they set out at this stage the process for doing that. But what we have understood from colleagues is that it will feature many of the same aspects of the Green Freeport, but it will be not limited to a port area. and we think that would be the best way forward. And certainly the partners who were funding partners in the bid, Stena and South of Scotland Enterprise, are also keen to make that progress. So we are committed to that. This council, through this committee, has made that commitment to the southwest of Scotland and the Stranraer and the Rins, and we need to make further progress around that. So part of this isn't about necessarily being wholly disappointed on the green Freeport, but also seizing the opportunity and lobbying government for us to be attracting the next range of support for enterprise and innovation in our region.
Andy, were you going to come in as well?
No, nothing to add for that.
Thank you. Does that answer your query?
Yeah, but I think it's important that we do lobby as hard as we possibly can to try and mitigate this disappointment. And interesting to hear what Lorna was saying in terms of still tying in Stena and South of Scotland Enterprise to the bid moving forward. Because as Lorna has identified, there's plenty of land that's prime for development. And if we can get the private sector on board, then we should be in a unique position to move that forward. But we need to be lobbying hard at the Scottish Government to bring about the enterprise zone that's referred to in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Yes, I mean, we will move on to the recommendations in time, although I do note that 2.3 is to receive a further update. We might want to look at perhaps putting a time frame to our next committee on that, but we can come to the recommendations. Councillor Ingalls.
Thank you, Chair. I think disappointment doesn't cover it. I think the constituents out in the West have been let down in this one, considering we've been working on this since August last year. It would be interesting to know just exactly how far we went with the bid, you know, where we are with the preparation of the bid. And given the fact that P&O were kicked out of the room at the end of March, the consequences of that for this bid are obviously fairly high. And it would be interesting to know also why the advisors, or what the advice was that came forward to officers to pull this bid. The decision was taken and backed by full council to go for a green Freeport, and we decided to fund that to the tune of £130,000 or thereabouts. You know, and then all of a sudden it disappears, and it's disappeared not by vote. It's not been taken away by elected members. It appears to have been taken away in a business case which hasn't been produced to elected members. So we have no idea why that business case has been dropped. It would have been interesting to have that come to full council. I think it was important enough to come to full council in May. And I think it should have been addressed at that point early so that we knew what was happening. I'm a realist. I understand that it's the 20th of June. It's the deadline for this, and we are now no way ever getting that bid in. But I would really like to get the information on who made the decision, why the decision was made, and what information was brought forward to get that decision taken. I think that decision should have been taken by elected members. However, as I say, I would like to know just how far on we were with the bid process. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ingalls. I'll pass to Lorna to respond to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ingalls. I'll bring Andy in on a couple of points of specificity that you made there. So we were clear in our reports to this committee and at the full council report that we were in the process of concluding phase 1, and that was described in the report. And that was to look at the bid development and the opportunity to build a business case, and that wasn't concluded at that point at the end of March when council took its decision. We were in standstill at that point because the transfer of the consultancy from P&O and DP World, who were leading on that at the time, and they've been very helpful, and they did do that, but that took a few weeks beyond the decision members took. And members said that they would like us to continue to engage with the other partners of the bid group, identify how we would proceed in the circumstances after the decision of full council and any consequential resource requirements. And at that point, at the end of April, Ernst & Young came forward and said they hadn't concluded the report on phase 1. We were heading towards a really constrained time to get a phase 2 in, but their advice is in the paper, it's described at 3.6, and we provided that to members of this committee. So at that point, our consultancy, who are experts in developing Freeport bids, and they've done it across the UK and the world, are saying that we didn't have sufficient collateral in our bid to go forward, that we would probably spend money, we wouldn't be successful. So that's what they've said. We've just recently received the report at the end of last week, so we're happy to brief members on that and provide that to you. But it wasn't just, we didn't take a decision as officers, we took a view and consulted with leaders. We didn't do an expedited report to invest further monies that were already allocated. Wouldn't be imprudent of the council. As officers, we didn't have that cover. Unfortunately, these things have occurred over a period of election and transition into a new council, and that's not ideal in terms of decision making over that period. But also, we were also in this bid with other funding partners, both SOS and Stena, who frankly wouldn't have wished to invest more money in a bid that was not going to be successful. And the second phase, where members had allocated £30,000, and then allocated a further £90,000, with the loss of P&O to the bid, the cost of the bid at phase 2 was likely to be at least £250,000, and we would have to have paid our share of that. But that was also incumbent on our partners in SOS and Stena to make that contribution as well. So it wasn't just a decision that we could unilaterally take, but certainly that was the indication not to proceed. The best way really set out in the paper is about us looking for the majority of the benefits that we could achieve in the Green Freeport, but looking at that more broadly with partners and the cluster of businesses that have been working with us to seek support through Scottish Government for an enterprise zone which would provide the majority of the benefits, but not just restrict us to the port operations and the complexities around that. So that was brought here today to members at the first opportunity, but the proximity of the bid process for the 20th of June is unfortunate as well. So these are not things that we designed into the process, it's just been a challenge on that. So happy to, if Andy's got anything to add to that, but that's where we've been over the last month, waiting for that report to come in, which we just received, advising members of what we've been told, but we felt it imprudent to proceed, and consulted with leaders prior to the election who said, just prior to the election, who said that they agreed with our advice at that point.
Councillor Inglis, do you want to come back here?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm presuming that all the other bids in Scotland for green freeports were given the same period of time as we have to prepare our bid, and I'm wondering why we sort of fell back on that one. If it takes from August till the end of March to do the stage 1 of that bid, had we really any hope of getting this over the line for the end of June for stage 2? I'm wondering why there would be a delay between August and the end of March to get that stage 1, or whether it's as straightforward as that. It just appears that, as I say, disappointment doesn't cover it for the west of the region, and it's really important that the west start to be prioritised for this economic development. And I think the zone that you're proposing, they've not been wholly successful throughout the UK and other areas. And I think it's really important, as Willie says, that we need to lobby for whatever it is we're going to get out there and try and deliver that fairly quickly. But my concern is that other areas who were bidding for the green freeports, they had the same timescales as we had. And for some reason, we haven't made it.
I'm happy to come back on that. I think there's two factors at play. DP World, who are the parent company of P&O, have experience of developing free ports both in the UK and abroad, and they brought that expertise and collateral to the table. It's a simple fact around that, and we were processing towards the phase 1 wasn't just simply early doors work, it was providing all the collateral to make a formal bid. So phase 2 was making the formal bid. and that's been challenging in terms of the standstill around the decision of council and then the pursuit of the handover of that information and proceeding with that. And as I said, they were very supportive and cooperative with us, so I don't hear anything different there. So I think officers have been working diligently with the partners to head towards this date. But notwithstanding that, I think it's important that I think you're referring to enterprise areas that have been in Scotland for more than 20 years, and the enterprise zones that are being mooted by government have a lot of the features of the new free port or green free ports in Scotland. So they are different, and they will be anticipated to support clusters, which is what we were building around this. I think a feature of many of the other bids has been a significant private sector partner. So I can give an example, and it's in public knowledge, Forth Porters. So that's been a challenge for us. And with Stena and P&O, we had, I think, sufficient capacity, but that has been a challenge around Stena, who've got a much smaller port operation, and they're extended out into the sea rather than having a lot of land round about as well to develop the port zone itself. So those are challenges, and they're summarised in this report, and we'll happily give you a full briefing on the full advice we had.
Yep, I'll let you come back in once more, Councillor.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, so really the loss of P&O has really sunk this bid, basically. So the decision that was taken at the end of March, for all good reasons, I fully understand that, but that's really what sunk this bid. Am I correct in saying that?
I think it's a factor. I think that's plain in it. But also I would say that a key factor of Green Freeport success in a bid would have been fair work practices. The members were clear across the floor at the March Committee that those fair work practices were not being demonstrated by P&O, and that's been well trailed in both Scottish and UK government assessment of their operations with P&O. So, there's challenges in both inclusion and exclusion of P&O.
Thank you, Councillor Ingalls. And Lorna, I think that is the point of fair work, and that I recall one of our previous councillors, Councillor Maitland, who worked for P&O herself, spoke very eloquently of how horrified she was at the way that the company had changed its whole attitude to work and fair practice for their employees. But I've got Councillor Dryber looking to come in. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. And as Vice Chair of that committee, and there's nobody more upset than myself, and I agree with David and Willie about how that's going to try, and it's going to be very trying for people across in the west of the region. But as one door closes, another one basically opens, and there's an opportunity here, I think. But there is a lot of I wouldn't say misinformation, but information that's not here about the enterprise zones moving forward. There's also the links into things like the borderlands, the South of Scotland enterprise issues, any of the other projects that were the cars were moving forward. And an enterprise zone could be, as it suggests in the report, up to 28 miles. And as Willie suggested before, the opportunities for the airstrips and things like that across there are massive. But I think we as elected members need to really understand what that actually means for the area. So when we come to the recommendations, Chair, I would like to see a report back what it actually means, and what we can use, what we can influence. There'll be infrastructure issues, there'll be opportunities to talk with other private sector organisations and third sector organisations as well as our public partners as well. And it's about making sure that we as an Economy and Resources Committee understand what we can take to full council for that support. So as part of the recommendations, Chair, I would like a report back sooner rather than later as to how we take that forward. And I would suggest that as part of the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I think absolutely we do need to make sure that we're not losing any momentum on this, and I would be happy to look at the recommendations when we come to that to get that in place. I don't know if any of the officers want to respond to that at this point. Nope. Okay. I've got Councillor Dennerley, then Councillor Hislop, and then Councillor Thompson to come in. So, Councillor Dennerley.
Thank you, Chair. As the Conservative group, we've been discussing our real disappointment with the Green Freeport. It's a real missed opportunity, but we need to move on to the enterprise zone and the potential linked to that. There are lots of different opportunities connected to that, and it's time for us to move on and consider that as a serious option. The west of Scotland needs some serious development, so I'd like to ask you, what's the plan in terms of the enterprise zone? Have you got costings, staff, timelines, specific details as to how this plan is going to work and develop that area of the country? We also feel as though there should be some campaigning to improve public transport links. One of these being a railway link from Dumfries to Stranraer. There's a lot of potential for business using this railway link because it means that we can move away from using the A75 and the A77 and try and focus on a more net zero approach to try and develop that area of the region. It might cost billions of pounds to do it, but we need to invest in the infrastructure to get some money back out of the economy and improve businesses and enterprise zones. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dennery. I thought Andy Reid will respond to that, I believe.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor. In relation to the national strategy for economic transformation, we're not clear exactly the levers that they're using for new enterprise zones or the economic zones and clusters. What we would intend to do is to write to the Scottish Government and ask to be involved in developing or supporting their development of what a new zone would look like, what a new cluster would look like, and therefore build our case at that point, mainly looking at trying to identify the levers that were in the Green Freeport that we would want to try and utilise within any new zone. That way, still creating the benefit that we have. In relation to the sort of transport infrastructure, part of the Green Freeport had looked at the work, has looked at the infrastructure impacts and identified that there's a need for improvements, and we would look to link those to some of the other projects which are underway. But the first part that we would need to do now is to write to Scottish Government with members' approval to allow us to be involved and to develop that concept going forward.
Thank you, Andy. I think Councillor Dennery's made a very valid point. We do need to get that site of the detail, but that's not available at this point, if I'm correct in your response there. And certainly I think that would link in to our recommendation 2.3 to receive a further update on whether we want to link that in to a timeline, for example, to our next committee. But Councillor Dennery, were you wanting to come back with any questions? I would also just add in as well that there is work being done by the Communities Committee in terms of our regional transport strategy, and the points made are well, and I think we're all aware of those. But I'll pass back to yourself if you would like to come back in.
I understand that at the moment the local people have set up a railway group to try and campaign for this railway line to get the investment that it needs. There are, the railways at the top of the priority list to get from Dumfries to Stranraer, because we need to introduce these freight opportunities so that we can move goods from Scotland to Northern Ireland. We cannot rely on the A75 all the time. We have to be thinking about road safety and thinking about greener and more sustainable opportunities. So this is why this has to be a serious consideration, and we must work closely with the Scottish Government to develop this £1 billion plan, and that will help us develop economic zones in turn.
Thank you, and I would fully support that, and I'm a member of one of those lobbying groups that support the railway. We have also appointed to the North Channel Partnership, where we're looking at developing those relationships with our business partners and for the economy of the south of Scotland. So I'll look forward to getting the feedback from the Conservative group on taking that forward as well. But thank you. Councillor Hislop.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would echo the points about disappointment. We've sat here, well, I've sat here for numerous years, maybe not quite as long as Councillor Scobie, but not far off it. And it's the disappointment of every time there's a project for Stranraer, you get it down the road a wee bit, and then it's, you know, the feet are pulled from it. We had money for the, was it a marina development, was the original one that never appeared. Then we've had this one. We're now looking at possible enterprise zone. This needs to happen for that area, because we can't continually build up hopes and then dash them, as has happened. Things out with our control, we understand that, but we need to be looking now to actually deliver on one of these ideas that we brought forward. One of the things that was said was the enterprise zones are similar to the Freeport, or there's similarities. Based on that, and based on the fact that we were relying a lot on the work being done by P&O, DP World, for their expertise, do we have a partner who we can bring on board who are in the area, who can actually help us to bring this forward? Or were P&O the ones that we were sort of relying on to take us forward? And with them out of the picture now, do we have sufficient capacity to actually form an enterprise zone within the council, within local businesses, etc.? Or do we need to bring someone else in?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hislop. I think just on one of the points, in item 11, we are looking at and hopefully going to be moving forward with some of the investment in the West. So I absolutely hear what you're saying in terms of there is going to be disappointment, but I understand there's also going to be a report coming to full council in terms of other investment going forward. But I'll pass over to Lorna to come back on the specifics.
We do have a we do have a partnership of non-funding partners that were involved here. So landowners, renewable companies, energy companies, both, as I said, international, local, regional as well. And they're really supportive of the approach to a cluster. I think also, Councillor Hislop, you're right, that we need to regroup, look at the response that we get from Scottish Government, but also look to what additionality we need, either through SOS or through that consortia that we reform, or whether we need collectively additional support, both in terms of expertise or capacity. So that is an assessment that we'll need to come back when we update members.
Does that answer your question? Yep, thank you. Councillor Thompson, and then I'll bring in Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. It's clear from listening to the Chamber today that this Council fully supports ways to invest in the west of the region. And I think we need to move away from there being a sort of perennial disappointment in the west to a perennial optimism. And I think it's clear that we need a report back, not just an update, but something that's going to tie off the information that we would have liked to have seen today. So the final report from Ernst & Young, for example. Clearly the election has got in the way of things, but a path of intention was obviously taken after March and on the 5th of May to sort of explore these options more fully. We've not got that in front of us today, and indeed this is the first report we've really got addressing it. So I think that's something we need to learn from, I think, and make sure that we get that information to members as soon as possible if it's already available now. And a report that does come back to full council, or even this committee probably, should really outline in more detail what an enterprise zone or whatever might look like, because we need to be quick on this, and not an update I don't think is enough, and it doesn't set the urgency I think that this committee has been expressing in terms of being able to take something forward in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I don't know if officers want to add to that. It's a point well made that others have made, so we can come to the recommendation 2.3, and when we come to that. Councillor Doogie Campbell, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Thompson's covered much of what I wanted to say. It's good to see that there is a general consensus in the hall here in terms of moving forward with an enterprise zone. I think we just have to accept we are where we are in terms of the Greenport, but what I think we need to do in our discussions with the Scottish Government is just re-emphasise the strategic importance of Cairnryan, not just the southwest of Scotland, but for the whole of Scotland and indeed the UK. And Brexit's a factor in that. There's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, because of the protocol bill that was published yesterday, but I think we need to just really embrace this opportunity with the enterprise zone and move forward. Just one quick point in response to the point that Councillor Dennerley was making on the rail line. Members will know that's something that I have supported, and I made the point when we were preparing the consultation response on STPR, I forget the letters right, the Scottish Transport Review, recognising the transformational impact that the rail line would have. Unfortunately, it appeared that that review, they were moving away from a rail line, but I would hope that we can take the opportunity to re-emphasise the positive impact reopening the rail line would have if we are to progress with the enterprise zone. So I think we're potentially getting another bite of the cherry on the possibility of the railway line. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. And I think those points are well made, and in terms of agreeing 2.2, when we come to that, we can include some of those points made in writing to Scottish Government. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Really just want to echo the sentiments of most, that most people in the room expressed with regards to the loss of the opportunity. But I mean, I think when you look at the report, the exclusion of P&O Ferries and DP World and the expertise that they had, then I think when you look on reflection, probably we've only committed £20,000. So I think there's a real opportunity with regards to looking at the wider Stranraer and Cairnryan area with regards to an enterprise zone. And I think we need to I think it was Ivor that said, I think we need to keep the momentum going on this. And I think there would be justification, I think, in a report, even if it's, to the next meeting, even if it's about, maybe the response, hopefully we'll have got back from the Scottish Government, but also a little bit more detail on the enterprise zone. And I think there's an opportunity here as well to explore. There is a lot of private sector partners, etc., in the West that would be willing to actually work with us and with South Scotland Enterprise and Stena. So I think it's disappointing, but we could have went down the stage of actually submitting the bid, had an unsuccessful bid, cost the council £250,000, and we wouldn't have anything additional in Stranraer. So I think we've got an opportunity here, and hopefully we've got some funding there that we can actually put towards actually starting to develop the case.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Johnston, I've got you looking to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the money that we've committed to this already, and the fact that we have spent the £20,000, which I hope that work will prove beneficial towards the enterprise zone. So it also means there's an unspent allocation of 100,000, which is going to be, I think it says here, going to be used within the economic recovery fund. If we're going to speed this whole process up, should we not be looking at keeping that £100,000 for our economic zone preparation work?
I'll bring Lauren in on that one.
Yes, certainly. I think in one of the next report that's been requested by members and subject to the detail in that, that money is available for members to apply as they see fit. So I think the reference to alternative use within the Economic Recovery Fund is whatever members decide to apply that to. So absolutely.
Can I just come back? Because I think it would actually send out a clear message to the people in the West that we are taking this seriously and are going to be progressing it.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I don't see any other first-time speakers, but I see Councillor Scobie is looking to come back in.
Yeah, Chair, I'm pleased with the remarks that have been made this morning in terms of the West and recognising the West does need development, enterprise development, and if we can only get the Scottish Government also to recognise that corner of Scotland that's been well articulated throughout the period. It's just in response to what Ivor was saying, or rather the response Ivor got from both Andy and Lorna. It's not clear what an enterprise zone is, but we would want to develop along with the Scottish Government. So it's at what point would it be appropriate for elected members to, not just to write to the Scottish Government, but to get the sense of urgency and importance to this, when it would be important for elected members to be involved, to perhaps lobby the enterprise minister to say, look, this is what we are looking at, this is how we would want it shaped, if they are not clear on it. And the emphasis being that it's not just officers, but there's private sector, as Archie says, third sector involvement, and it's to put that point over to them. If we can try and direct, guide them in terms of what we would see as an enterprise zone at this stage. So it's really when it would be appropriate. I think it's now in terms of the importance of this, and so that we're not letting down, as Davy said, so it's a wee bit more than disappointing, so we're not letting down the people of the southwest of Scotland.
Lorna, I'll bring you back in. Thanks.
I think that's a really important point, Councillor Scobie. The National Strategy for Economic Transformation, which was launched a couple of months ago with the Scottish Government, has at its heart an urgency and a pace to it. And I think they would respond to that expression of urgency in an initial approach. I think in terms of any response we get from that, bringing it back to this committee and how members would then wish to engage, but we'll make clear, subject to members' decisions today, in that draft letter that members would wish to send. The engagement of the local elected representatives will be important in shaping that, if that's what members wish to do.
Thank you, members. So I don't see anybody else looking to come in to speak. And I think it's important we move to the recommendations today. I think it's also been very welcome to hear that everybody in the room is looking to progress this for the west of the region, and everybody recognises the strategic importance of this area and how we move forward. So our recommendations before us, 2.1 is first of all to note that the Council and the partners of the South West Euro Gateway will not be submitting a bid for the Green Freeport status for the ports of Cairnryan as outlined in paragraphs 3.6 to 3.8 of the report. We're happy to note this. Note with disappointment. Thank you, Councillor Scobie. 2.2 is to agree to write to the Scottish Government, and there's been various points raised in debate. I think we've got a note of those highlighting some of the specifics. So are we happy to agree to put that letter forward? Councillor Scobie.
And like others, I've supported a rail link between Stranraer and Dumfries, but I don't think that can run alongside, pardon the pun, with the 75, that we still would be looking for development on the 75 along with the rail line, that we don't lose sight of that.
I think that can certainly be raised as part of the letter going forward. So we're happy to agree that. 2.3 is to agree to receive a further update. Now, do we want to amend that to ensure that that comes to our next committee? Councillor Dryburgh.
Yeah, Chair. I think it's agreed to receive a further report on the development of a case for enhanced investment status in the former enterprise zone or similar designation, but also where the links of Borderlands and the other projects that are the Council are involved with there can actually enhance that opportunity as well.
So are members happy to include that additional? And Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'd like to see contained in that as well, and I think members would welcome just the final Ernst & Young report, because obviously today's information was indicative analysis, obviously, and also I think we heard as well from Lorna just that SOSE and Stena also were sort of more lukewarm about going forward, as is just now. So clearly it's not just ourselves that would have been able to drive this forward anyway. So I think we need to get that in black and white so we understand fully what they're prepared to go forward with as part of the report that comes back as our partners potentially. But just so we get the full detail that we maybe didn't get today, but that we do get that either before or at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Marshall and then Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Ingalls. So we'll get the comments and then we'll pull together a recommendation. Thank you.
I think when I was just listening to Councillor Dryborough's kind of amendment to 2.3, I think notwithstanding the points it's made, I think what we need to put is to agree to receive a further update and then after update to the next meeting, because I think we'll be able to provide information. We don't know the level of that information, but we will be able to actually provide information on, you know, maybe what the enterprise zone is, what the response is from the Scottish Government, and maybe by then we would also be able to identify what kind of initial funding will be required that maybe we would want to commit from this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Ferguson.
Okay, it's kind of a governance point. The decision to actually put a bid in or to work on a bid was a decision of a committee. So does it need a committee decision to stop that process rather than just note?
I'll pass to Claire for that one, or Lorna, would you like to come in? Claire, as our governance officer, can you give us advice on that one, please?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, there's been development since that decision was taken. So, you've got that information in front of you. I don't believe you need a decision, but you obviously can make it clearer if you wish.
I don't know. I think Lorna was wanting.
Words note if members would wish to. I think Councillor Scobie said with disappointment, but I agree or confirm, whatever words members are comfortable with, but if you wish to do that.
It's just, I think the wording's a wee bit unfortunate, with hindsight, but that's wonderful. Because I think we need to be clear there in the recommendations. It's the partnership that are not taking us forward, not the council. Okay, and I think that needs to be the thrust rather than naming the council and end the partnership after it, because it doesn't relate to 2.2, where it's the partners will not be submitting a bid. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I think the point is well made, so we can note with disappointment and agree that the council and partners, which is mentioned in there, but I think that point has been captured, which we will obviously take forward. Councillor Ingalls, I can see you're looking to come back in.
Yeah, really just on that point, I'm wondering whether we can add in submitting a bid for a green port status. It will not be submitting a bid at this time, rather than shutting the door on it completely. Because we've no guarantee that we're going to get an economic zone or an enterprise zone at the present moment in time. So, the door would always be open in the future that if we wanted to lobby to get a bid in for that, then we could do that.
I'll pass to Lorna, who's looking to come in on that one. Thanks.
I think that's a really fair point, and obviously the Scottish and UK governments have announced the Green Freeport process after some debate between them. It doesn't mean to say that they won't open that again, and we know that the bidding process for up to 2 is already oversubscribed multiple times from those that have announced bids, so I suspect it'll be opened again. So yeah, I agree. I think that's important.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, members. So to draw our recommendations, I think if we recap 2.1, which we have already noted, but we've noted with disappointment and agree that the council and partners will not be submitting and will capture at this time within that recommendation. We've already agreed on 2.2 to write to Scottish Government.
Chair, please, if I could. I actually said no, the partners have withdrawn, not the council and the partners, because the council is a partner.
Noted.
So
Councillor Ferguson, yep.
Take away the emphasis on the council.
Okay, note that the partners, or the partnership. Yes. Thank you. And agree to receive a further update to the next meeting as suggested by Councillor Marshall with the added information that's already been requested, including those reports from Ernst & Young and our costings and everything that's been brought forward as well from Councillor Dennerley. So are members happy to note and agree those recommendations? Thank you. Now, moving on to item 7, I would see Councillor Jordan was going to leave the chat for this item. So I'll just give that a moment. And then when we're finished the item, we'll ensure that Councillor Jordan is invited back into the meeting. I've been advised from governance that Councillor Jordan has popped that in the chat function of the committee. So item 7 is our strategic housing investment plan, and with the report before us today, we're being asked to agree a new project to the Council's strategic housing investment plan, and the report highlights some of the work currently underway to resolve development constraints across the region and recommends utilisation of council tax on second and empty homes to support work of the strategic housing support. We are also being asked for agreement to allocate the Council's Town Centre Living Fund and provide an update on applications to the National Vacant and Derelict Land Investment Programme. Members are also requested to nominate elected member representation on the Council's Strategic Housing Forum and to nominate a chair. Jamie Little is here to assist members who have any questions, and I will open up the meeting to members. Councillor Scobie.
Chair, I welcome this report, although I don't think it has gone far enough, and that will not be a surprise to Lorna nor Jamie. And the whole idea of utilising council tax on secondary empty homes to support strategic housing, it must be welcomed. But I turn to 3.3.4 and 3.4.3, where it's clearly, that housing and identify key partners to help provide more specific housing, such as larger property. And that's the reference to not going far enough. And indeed, in 3.4.3, the Vacant Area Committee discussed this and did put forward a recommendation to for SHIP to consider giving or addressing the shortage of large housing 4, 5, 6 bedroom properties. And I've had the discussion with Lorna and the acting head director of communities, and there's to be a report brought to full council, I think, in the September time. I think we need to focus on the larger properties, both for homeless and for those on the waiting list, and perhaps be drawn down, using the time to draw down as much as possible from the Scottish Government on their housing programme to try and get the registered social landlords to be building a lot more larger properties. My fear is that we may not be meeting our legal requirement in terms of homelessness when people arrive and require large properties, and we're either displacing them or not making available, which is worth the larger properties. And I think it's an immediate that we got to look at, notwithstanding this report, but it's how we get to that point in delivering what we are legally required to do.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Jamie, do you want to come in and respond to that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Scobie. The points are obviously being taken into account in terms of our discussions with the registered social landlords. We are working very hard to try and identify a number of new projects throughout Dumfries and Galloway, but particularly in the west of the region. The demands around larger family homes are well known, and I meet on a regular basis with colleagues from the Homelessness and Housing Options service to discuss some of the demands, particularly on them. But through our discussions with all the registered social landlord partners, we are trying to meet housing demand of many different types. And as you mentioned, a report will be brought back to full council around the challenges in terms of development and also those liabilities and constraints on the homelessness service as well. That's why we intend to take that forward to full council as a joint report.
Thank you. Councillor Dryburgh.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. As the previous chair of the Strategic Housing Forum, I just wanted to thank Jamie and his team for the support they gave me during that particular time. It's important that members understand the importance of the strategic housing investment plan in the area and the funding that comes along from council tax, from second homes. Looking at the recommendations, Chair, and we get down to the nominates, I'd like to nominate Willie Scobie, yourself, Sean Marshall, and I believe there's somebody from the Conservative group who's interested in doing that. Not as far as you're aware. Okay. To the four people, the places on the Strategic Housing Forum. And coming to the Strategic Housing Forum chair, I would nominate Sean Marshall.
Thank you, Councillor Dryburgh. Have you got a seconder for that?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Ingalls, I'll bring you in.
Yeah, Chair, I'll certainly go back and see if I can get somebody to represent us on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Hislop.
Just a wee bit of clarification on 3.6, Jamie. There's funding for Cotton Street. Now, if I've got this right, are they asking for funding from the Town Centre Living Fund to cover costs, but they're also applying through the Vacant and Derelict Land Improvement Programme? Is that for the same money or is that additional costs? Because I know land remediation will take up a fair bit of money, but is there additional cost to the actual project of building the site out?
Jamie, can you come in on that one, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Hislop. Just to clarify, the bids are for a total sum. The £250,000 that's been requested from Town Centre Living Fund will be added to a bid of in the region of £650,000 to the Vacant and Derelict Land Investment Programme. These are estimated costs at this time, but there is a significant shortfall between the funding that's available through the Affordable Housing Supply Programme and Cunningham Housing Association's own finances. So we are looking at this being a supporting bid to add additional weight behind the bid to the Vacant Derelict Land Investment Programme.
Thank you, and certainly I would welcome that application to the vacant and derelict land. Clearly the council are already working on a separate work stream of our own derelict buildings, so that will come to the appropriate committee. Councillor Ferguson, I've got you looking to come in, please.
Me, Katie, yeah. Okay, thanks. Good morning, Jamie. I'm talking about 3.6.2 on page 41, the old oil depot in Treggles Road. Were there ever any attempts made by the outgoing owners who actually contaminated the land to actually make it good, rather than using this money for that?
Jamie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Ferguson. The land has been purchased now by Building Craftsmen as part of the programme to take these works forward, and obviously the condition of the land would be taken into account in that valuation. So, as I understand it, no remediation works were attempted by the previous users of the site.
Okay, we kind of turn the clock back. That's fine. Well, it's not fine, but we are where we are. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I don't have any other members looking to come in. So turning to the recommendations, are we happy to note and agree 2.1 through to 2.6 in the recommendations? Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, it's just a minor point on 2.3. I'm happy to allocate that £30,000 for the Strategic Housing Coordinator, but presumably the assumption is that budget would always come from the second homes council tax. And obviously there's generally more than that is accrued in a year. Yep.
Yep, I believe that's the case. But Jamie, are you able to confirm that?
Yes, that is the case.
Thank you. So moving on to recommendation 2.7 and 8, there has been names nominated. 2.7 references one member from each political group, and Councillor Ingalls is going to come back to give us a representation from the Conservative grouping. So thank you. Are members happy to agree those? Thank you. We'll just ensure that Councillor Jordan can come back into the meeting, and then we'll move on to item 8. I'll just confirm that in 2.8 that we're agreeing to nominate Councillor Marshall as the chair of the Strategic Housing Forum as well. Thank you.
Can I just really thank Councillor Dryburgh for the last 5 years as a chair, and with Willie raising issues like that, the Strategic Housing Forum is an ideal way of engaging with all the partners. So with that and other issues, in the past, when we've raised those, that registered social landlords, etc., have listened. So look forward to working with you all to and work with the partners to take forward housing across the region.
Yep, I would welcome that, and also just acknowledge that while there's new members on that committee, we will have the experience of the likes of Councillor Scobie coming forward. So it's useful to have that continuity as well going forward. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, just if I could, is it possible to actually have the chat up on the screen here rather than the participants? Because then I wouldn't ask the daft question earlier if I'd known it was in the chat. But if you don't have the stuff in front of you, you can't see it. It's the only way we could possibly see it. Is that possible?
Sadly, it's not possible, and I think that's why we say that no material information should be posted in the chat. But certainly, as chair, I'll ensure that if there's anything pertinent like that in future, I'll read it out for you. Okay, we will move on to item 8. Have we got Councillor Jordan back in the meeting?
Yes, I can confirm Councillor Jordan's back in the meeting.
Thank you. So, members, item 8 is the Energy Efficient Scotland Area-Based Scheme, and this is a very welcomed report that asks the elected members to agree the Energy Efficient Scotland Area-Based Scheme for 22-23 projects for Dumfries and Galloway, and to note the funding allocation for the coming year from the Scottish Government and the out-term position for the 2022-2021 projects. Again, Jamie Little is here to assist members should you have any questions, and I'll open it up to members just now. Councillor Dryburgh.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. And this has been agreed several times over the last number of years, and Dumfries and Galloway residents and homes have benefited from this, especially private individuals who get something in the region of a £10,000 insulation pack for about £1,700, which is absolutely fantastic. However, there has been an issue raised over the last couple of weeks about insurance for homes on private property owners with regard to the insulation itself. I do believe there is an answer to this, but I think the potential of people not coming forward because of this fear needs to be realised, and what is the actual outcome from those discussions, or what is the council's stand on this particular thing. It has to do with Grenfell, and of course this is the 5th anniversary of Grenfell today, and our thoughts are with those particular individuals in that particular area as well. It's just to make sure that insurance is available for the private dwellers who use this scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Dryburgh. Yes, I believe that there was an issue raised within social media, and Jamie was able to respond, but I'll pass over to Jamie to give us an update on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dryburgh. In terms of the one private landlord who had raised the issue, they have now been able to obtain home insurance so that their properties are covered. The issue is obviously one that we've taken very seriously and has been raised with both the Scottish Government and other councils across Scotland. To date, we aren't aware of any other instances of this happening, and specifically looking at Dumfries and Galloway, where there's been around 2,000 installations carried out to date. This is the only time it has been raised as a potential issue. However, as you mentioned, the 5-year anniversary of the Grenfell Tower fire, which is obviously something that's always in our minds when we're looking at these insulation schemes. While that's obviously very, very sad time, it's important to recognise as well that's led to additional scrutiny of these works and higher specification of standards that's expected to be met. These do meet very, very stringent requirements around the installation, the process that's put in place to monitor them, and the system is identified as being safe for installation within properties. It's certified by the British Board of Architects and by our own building control as being a safe system that's put in place. Obviously, if there are further instances of people being refused insurance, as we have done with this particular case, we will look to discuss that further with the Scottish Government. For this private landlord as well, we also provided a significant amount of literature and support to assist with gaining insurance on these properties through colleagues in the Energy Agency, including all the certification details. However, the insurance company some insurance companies took the decision not to cover this property. However, they have now been able to gain that insurance.
Okay, thanks very much, Jamie. I think that needed to be told to the public, and especially as these are getting recorded and shown now live. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I don't see any other members looking to come in. Oh, I've got 2 hands going up. Councillor Campbell, I think you were first.
Thank you, Chair. Quick off the mark. You've got to be with Willie sitting next to you. I mean that with all due respect, Willie. It's just I am happy to support the areas proposed in the area-based scheme, but if I could just put out an appeal for subsequent years that we don't neglect other areas in the west of the region. So it'd be useful, I think, next time if we had some explanation in the narrative of why areas weren't chosen. Because I certainly know of a lot of people in my ward who are living in fuel poverty, and it's going to get a lot worse, obviously, because of the cost of living crisis. So it's just an appeal in future, a bit more detail on why areas weren't selected, and just to have an explanation of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can that be provided next time, Jamie, for future reports?
Good, thanks, Chair. I think it's important to say as well that no area is excluded from this scheme. While these projects that we're seeking members' agreement to here will be the targeted areas, should anybody come forward from out with those areas, then obviously their properties will be assessed and looked at. The intention here is to target specifically properties that we've both identified as being suitable for the installation of solid wall insulation, but also in areas that are identified as being most likely to be in fuel poverty. So no areas are not allowed or excluded from this, but we can certainly look to provide some further detail around that within future reports.
Thank you, Jamie. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, it's always good to follow Dougie. But yeah, I'm looking at this report and again looking at 3.2.2, and it's the seriously frightening figures in here where we are running at 28% when the national average is 25% of those living in fuel poverty. And these figures have been with us for a considerable time. That's both in the socially rented properties and in private sector. And it's really how do we take advantage of the area-based schemes and maybe leading on to local heating projects and how we can develop that. I know there's been discussion with Simon Fieldhouse. I don't know if Jamie's been involved in that, but it's how we can look at some of the expertise that are within the region to see how we can develop local heating projects that can reduce the fuel poverty that people are experiencing. And we're not just talking about people living on the benefits, but also it was predicted that we'd be now looking at people on medium income, the middle income bracket that will fall now into fuel poverty. And that's it's seriously frightening, and it's how we take advantage of developing other schemes under the area-based schemes for local heating systems that we can work alongside some of the expertise that are within the region. And there's been initial discussions, but it's how we develop that over the next coming years.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Jamie, are you able to expand on that at all, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Scobie. So within the report, we're highlighting that we're looking at a special project which would also allow us to potentially leverage in additional funding in later financial years, to also through the Scottish Government, particularly to target net zero and fuel poverty objectives. We work very closely with our colleagues in the environment team leading on the Climate Emergency Strategic Plan to identify suitable areas. The Council will also be required to develop a local heat and energy efficiency strategy, which that team will be leading on. That's to be in place by the end of 2023, which will cover housing and residential properties. We are working very closely with colleagues in that service. And they are currently scoping a potential district heating network scheme within Dumfries, which is at early stages at this moment, but we have been inputting into that from the perspective of identifying social housing, potential sites, and also some of the private accommodation that's in the area. So that work is ongoing, and every effort is being made to try and identify some of these special projects within the resources that we currently have available to us.
Thank you, Jamie. Councillor Scobie, were you wanting to come back in?
No, just pleased to hear that. Only we could accelerate that from, I know he's saying 2023, and there's opportunities in Stranraer under the efficiency and some of the other things we were discussing earlier. So if we could maybe include that as well.
Thank you. Yes, certainly as one of the leads on the budget, the district heating within Dumfries was something that we brought forward through the last council. Obviously, we're still to publish our council plan going forward, but with all 43 members invited to link into our council plan, these are all really important issues going into the future. Clearly, there is an issue, and the 2.37 million that's been allocated to us is clearly required, and I think it's important that we take that forward in the most appropriate way. But moving to the recommendations, if I've not got any other members looking to speak, we're being asked to note 2.1, note 2.2 and agree 2.3. Thank you, members. Moving on to item 9, this is our Local Development Plan 2, and it's a review of the suspension of marketing requirements. Our approval is sought to extend the current suspension of the requirement in policy ED1, which is the business and industry, and CF1, which is community facilities, to demonstrate that a site has been marketed for a further 12 months until the end of June 2023. The suspension is aimed at helping to support the local economy recover from the impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. I've got Shona McCoy here to assist members should you have any questions. So I will open it up to members for debate. Councillor Hislop.
Chair, it was not so much a question, just support for the recommendations. I think it's a practical way forward, and I think hopefully it will enable anybody who's wanting to sell their business, sell their property, change planning use in it, to actually take that forward in these sort of harder times, but with the hope that after June next year everything's rosy.
I think we can but hope, yes, absolutely. If I don't have any other members looking to come forward, are we happy to agree these two recommendations? Thank you. Item 10. We're moving on to the Economy and Resources Revenue Budget Monitoring Report for 2021-2022. And this report provides an overview of performance against budget at the end of the financial year 21-22 for each of the services within Economy and Resources, including details of the financial implications of the COVID-19 emergency response and subsequent recovery. I've got Tam Adler and I've got Gillian Ross here, who are able to assist members if they have any questions. Or Alder, excuse me, Tom. Any members wishing to come in at this point? Councillor Hislop.
Thank you, Chair. it's good to see that we have an underspend. Some of that's through not being able to get out and do our business because of COVID, etc. The 848,000 underspend, is that cash in the bank, or is the 838,000 accrual to come off that figure? So we've actually got, if you're looking at pounds in the bank, you've got a £10,000 underspend, or do we have a nearly 1.7 million underspend if that money then comes back in? I think it's possibly the difference between I look at my bank book rather than profit and loss accounts, because they can, you know, your accruals are in there. And the other thing is we don't want that accrual to actually come back and bite us in the posterior, shall we say, like a certain roads one did. So we know it's there. Are we still spending that money this year? Because it is, now what is it? It is anticipated that money will start this year again. I wouldn't like to think that we're going to spend money on that budget line of the European funding and not get it for a second year. And the other wee bit that I would like to see, we're putting money into reserves. One of those is a planning fee reserve, whatever it is. Is there any way that we could maybe use some of that on a temporary basis to possibly employ a temporary officer to move some of these planning applications forward? Because it's the one thing that seems to be coming back to me, that there are slight delays in the process, some of that caused by back office issues, etc. And if we could get that maybe speeded up a wee bit, our performance would increase.
Thank you, Councillor Hislop. I've got various officers here, and there was quite a few different points made, so I'll maybe bring Lorna in on the planning issue, and obviously recruitment is an eternal issue within that department, but I'll pass over to Lorna on that one, and then perhaps maybe bring Gillian in terms of the actual finances.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Hislop. On the planning fees income, members agreed last September for us to go out to recruit more posts. We've been partially successful in that, and we are competing with the rest of the UK at the moment on planners. And we know from other councils they're having the same challenge. So there is a kind of gap between bringing on new people, retraining people, or giving young people opportunity to train as planners as well. And that's part of the focus of the improvement plan. But meantime, we have been somewhat successful in securing some resources, but that has been a kind of continued challenge. So we do have the Development Management Improvement Plan, and there's a seminar being organised for all members of this committee, in fact all members, just after recess, and we're bringing a report back to this committee, both in terms of progress on that, but also seeking member support for further investment, as you've suggested. So absolutely, that's been a kind of focus for us.
Thanks, Lorna. So Tom or Gillian, I'll pass it over to you to see who wants to come back with the other answers that Councillor Hislop raised.
Thank you. So just in response to Councillor Hislop's query, just to confirm that the position of the £848,000 underspend is based on income from the accrual. So it is basically, we work on an accruals basis rather than the cash basis in terms of what you were referencing there. So once that income is received, that is the 848. But as we've set out within the report, we're quite confident that that income should be received, and once it is, it's basically encompassed within that overall position. So there won't be any further, contributions as part of that scheme there. In terms of the reserves, I think it's probably what you might notice is if you have a look at the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee papers that are coming up on the overall council position, is that there will be a review of service reserves across the board undertaken over the next few months, with the outcomes of that reported to the following committee in terms of the contributions that may be able to be released to the overall medium-term financial strategy and support for the council plan coming up as part of that.
Thank you, Gillian. Does that answer your questions, Councillor Hislop?
Yes, and I think it's a get it spent or you're losing it.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a wee question on page 73, just to do with the budgeted vacancies which hadn't been filled during this year. There's a review of staff and structures to address areas of service demand within the new financial year. What sort of detail might we expect to see and when, just around that? Because I gather, you know, that's, judging by the amount of money, it could be quite a significant piece of work. So it'd be interesting to maybe get a bit more detail on that as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know which of the officers. Tom, are you able to respond, or Gillian, Lorna? I'll pass to Lorna.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Thompson. So part of this has been people leaving, moving on to new jobs, both within the council and out in the market. It's been really challenging in terms of attracting recruitment. I think with COVID, some people are able to move. You know, they can do that, and others are sitting tight, obviously with housing prices and other things as well. So we've had some challenges around filling posts, but as we've moved out the COVID restrictions and people feel more confident, we have seen such progress around that. So some of it is the kind of perennial issue of someone leaving 1 month's notice, but it takes us about 2 to 3 months to recruit, and that gapping becomes a challenge. So we are looking at that, and we are also looking at some of the requirements, particularly around the digital strategy delivery and support for some of the work there, and that will come forward to this committee in due course.
Do you want to come back?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Lorna. I think it was just to get a sense of, I appreciate there's difficulties across all sectors, if you like, in terms of recruitment and retention. But it was more, are we clear, and is this what the review of staff structures will bring to us, what we actually need in order to deliver our plans, if you like, and therefore we can focus on how best to fill those given the constraints you've just outlined? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So I don't have anybody else looking to come in. Oh, Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much. It's a kind of two-pronged bit here. 3.5, pleased to see there was an increase in planning and building warrant fees, and then partially offset by legal fees incurred in wind farm proposals. A bit of explanation of what that exactly means would be helpful. But then when you marry that up with Appendix 3, Planning and Development Reserve, we've actually increased the reserves there, despite having more applications for planning or whatever. So what are we putting in place there to get an increase in the staffing, so that we use that reserve for what it's meant for, rather than...
I'll pass over to Lorna for that one.
So on the first point, we incur legal fees on costs associated where we've got to deal with refusal of planning permissions or planning inquiries, particularly around large wind farms, etc. And that is variable from year to year. So I think colleagues have indicated the total fees this year passed for those legal fees, which are usually external legal fees that our legal services procure, was about £143,000. The usual practice in that these costs are not controllable. Some years there's no costs, some years there's large costs, that those are usually met through the corporate funding approach and the budget allocations for pressures. But recognising the underspends within the service and the over-recovery of income, it was felt prudent that we would just absorb that cost within our overall outturn this year. In terms of the reserve, Councillor Ferguson, so going back to my points and made to Councillor Hislop, we are trying to pursue further recruitment, but also I think it's really important from my perspective that we invest in Grow Your Own. We've been somewhat successful in that around our surveyors who work with the assessor and bringing young people on and giving them graduate apprenticeships and further professional qualifications, and that's the area I think we need to look to invest in. That doesn't solve our immediate issues, so we are still looking to secure further support and capacity within the planning department.
Thank you. So we will move to the recommendations now. Are members happy to note 2.1, 2.2 and agree 2.3? Thank you. Now, I am in your hands, members. I'm conscious we've been going an hour and a half. We still have 3 items to go, and I would propose that we maybe just take a 10-minute break, just to have a comfort break for those online so they're not on screens, unless members are adamant and want to push straight ahead. But I would propose that we just take a 10-minute break and come back at 12:10, just because those next 3 items are quite important as well. Are members happy to agree that? Thank you. So we'll come back at 10 past. Thank you. Thank you, members. I think, is that us live once again? Thank you. Now, item 11 today, we are moving on to the Economic Development Capital Programme. I have also just been asked to remind members to speak up with the microphone just so everybody in the room can hear. So I would just ask you all to speak up, please. So our report before us on item 11 is providing members with the details of the outturn expenditure within Economy and Development Asset Class Capital Programme for 2021-2022 and the details of the capital programme for 22-23 to 24-25. The report also seeks our approval to agree the projects to go forward for Stage 1 submission to the Scottish Government Regeneration Capital Grant Fund. Simon Fieldhouse is here to assist members if we have any questions, and I will open this up to members for debate. Councillor Dryburn.
Chair, it always amazes me the amount of funds that we sort of administrate for local communities and trying to move forward and bring their projects to fruition, and it's good to see so many in the area actually benefiting from coming forward. I just like to say it's a good report in front of us, and I'm happy with the recommendations that are actually in it, Chair, and we look forward to getting more in the future, especially with the RCGF funds. That's the potential for improvement in those particular areas. Just wanted to say that's your no questions or anything, just happy with the report.
Thank you. I think there's certainly a lot in here. So, yeah, it's really helpful to get us that information. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, just following on from what Archie was saying there, I was looking for the George Hotel to appear in the recommendations, but I don't see it. And it's really just a reassurance from Lorna and Simon that this is moving forward. And I understood from listening or tuning into the seminar or the briefing session that it would appear in LUF, the Levelling Up Fund, which had a date of some July to apply. But then when I read the Appendix 3, and I welcome this and the development of this in moving forward along the lines as is laid out here, I see a year-long consultation programme. If anything, this has been consulted to death. The George Hotel, the people in Stranraer are only too well aware of the George Hotel. I'm quite sure there are others in different areas similar to it, but I don't think it could be any worse than the state and condition of the George Hotel. So it's really reassurance in that one that we are moving on as quickly as possible to try and get in on the Levelling Up Fund to provide what indeed is laid out in Appendix 3 as a way forward. And I think we're starting to get the support of the people of Stranraer for this very project. Just a couple of other ones, Chair, just on 3.10. And I briefly spoke with Lorna on this one in terms of place-based investment programme, where there's some 0.8, nearly 0.9 £100,000 or £1 million, £900,000 for 22-23, and I did suggest that maybe we could allocate that on a ward-by-ward basis to try and work up a place local plan in moving this forward. There's so many ideas coming out from communities, and it would be good to employ a development worker to work alongside the communities and work up a place plan for each of the wards. If we could look at that as a means of utilising that £900,000, and that would bring in local plans for each of the wards in, that wanted to involve themselves into that or with that. And the last point is Vacant and Derelict Land Investment Programme. And I've just referred to the George, but there's the Royal Hotel in Kirkcudbright, and there are other places where we have got derelict property that just become a source of annoyance for communities. And if we could try and work up this, I know that one of our local MSPs was moving this forward in terms of the Scottish Government looking at it and provide funding to address these particular problems. But if there was any way we could work alongside the Scottish Government to make available incentives and adjustments to get the owners of these properties to try and bring them back into use and take away that just the whole impact they have on the communities and our town centres, other areas of the communities.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Yep, I will pass over to Lorna. Obviously, there's 3 points there: your reassurance on the George Hotel, place based, and the derelict. So I'll pass over to Lorna, and then I'll let her bring Simon in as appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. So in terms of the George Hotel, as we indicated to members, we're preparing a bid to come to full council at the end of June. It's coming to full council because it includes 3 bids. Some are economic regeneration projects and some are transport bids. So rather than trying to work through 2 committees across the 3 bids, bringing the piece to full council, as we indicated, and that will include the George Hotel, and this committee agreed that in January that should be included as part of the levelling up bids as well. You referred to the ongoing discussion with the community there, and I think it's important that we get that local support, and the bid will require evidence of that. So Simon can provide a little bit more information, but that's been highly engaged with by the local community, and they've been very forthright in their views and supportive of the direction of the council around those things as well. In terms of the place plans, the place funding from Scottish Government, which is referred to in the report at 3.10, is capital funding for projects. And what we've looked at is, and it's included in the report, is the Community-Led Economic Regeneration Fund to provide prime funding for development of projects by communities or individuals or businesses to support regeneration of assets within their communities. And that sits alongside, I think, members' ambition to make sure that projects are well developed, they've had the right professional advice around development at different stages, and we've been oversubscribed, and you can see in the report the demands out there. But that is available for businesses and others to come forward as well. You mentioned the Royal Hotel in Kirkcudbright, and I think Councillor Dennerley also mentioned that hotel, and Councillor Campbell, 2 officers, and we'll have a look at what we can do to try and give support around that. As we heard at one of the previous items, the vacant and derelict land funding available from government, the investment programme, we're looking at support through the SHIP for that to support housing development. So the 2 projects that have been brought forward relate to them. But we're also looking at the development of a vacant and derelict land strategy for the council. Members gave authority for that late last year, and we've been working our way through that, again led through our strategic housing team. So we'll be bringing that back to this committee, and members will be engaged in the development and this description around that. So I'll pass to Simon, I think, in terms of more of the detail on Stranraer particularly.
Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, members. In relation, obviously, to the George Hotel, and obviously Councillor Scobie identifying the year-long engagement process, we've started this to form obviously the basis for a LUF bid, which has obviously created a bit of detail, but it hasn't taken anything off the table in terms of options moving forward for end use of the site. The year-long consultation process is one to ensure, obviously, that as we continue to develop and obviously hopefully be successful with our LUF application, that we've got the opportunity to shape, to sculpt, and to take the community with us. So it's being seen obviously as trying to address some of the concerns that this is not being directed from people outside Stranraer. It's very much being Stranraer led in terms of sort of that development. So that will give us the opportunity to capture views, to tweak the design, to ensure obviously that it's fit for purpose and creating a sustainable and economically sort of viable model moving forward. I know obviously we've had one consultation event so far, and there will be several others that will be planned over the next couple of months to ensure that we keep the community fully embraced and fully up to speed with our developments as we move forward.
If I could, Chair, just to come back and thank Lorna and Simon for the report on the issues that I have raised. It'd be good to catch up with Simon again with the ward members. Sean said, speak up. Folk used to say, shut up. However, no, it'd be good to catch up with Simon at an early date with the ward members just to see what, to discuss again the moving forward. Just, I should have said on the final point, and it's really just on Appendix 4, Chair, and this has to do with the Old Town Hall. And in here it says the revised tender package is currently on PCS with a closing date of the tender on the 9th of June. Are we any further forward on this one? It's had difficulty well beyond anyone's imagination in terms of trying to get workers, contractors to come forward and actually do the work. They were going to split the contract to try and address the issue. Are we any further forward in addressing this particular problem?
I'll bring Simon back in on that one, but just on the point you made about the consultation, and I know that this is something that has been brought up by Ward 1 and 2 members about the in the West, and that's about the communication and ensuring that there's a proper communication plan going forward. So I think it is welcome that if part of that consultation is based around the communication, we need to be very clear on that one. But Simon, are you able to come in on the specifics of that second point?
Thank you, Chair, and through yourself. Unfortunately, I don't have any further information from the closing date on the 9th. I will go and seek, obviously, from the relevant officers leading that, and obviously provide an update to all members in Ward 1.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to come in at this point? No? Okay, in that case, we will move to the recommendations. Now, there's 11 recommendations before us. Are we happy to note, agree and consider all of those recommendations from 2.1 through to 2.11 on page 82? Agreed? Thank you. Moving on to item 12. Item 12, let me just get my notes here, is our Property and Buildings and Other Asset Class Capital Programme for 21-22, and this report provides members with an updated information on the Property and Buildings Asset Class Capital Programme and the outturn position for the financial year 2021-22. The report also includes the proposed 3-year spend profile for this asset class capital programme. And I've got Paul McCulloch here to assist members if you have any questions. So I will open it up for debate. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. I fully understand the reasons why we've had so many slippages with a lot of these projects. And the whole sector's struggling due to lack of capacity. But the other concern, reassurance that a lot of these figures, especially in the future years, are going to have to take into account the fact that we're facing massive inflation in a lot of these projects. And I would like to hear if we've got any kind of contingency for that. And equally, for some of the things that have been out to tender, how robust are a lot of these tenders that have been accepted? Just for security.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Paul, can you come in and answer that point, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The points are very well made, and the difficulties that we're currently facing with regards to both having work undertaken and the cost of work. So in terms of those budget estimates, what we've done is we've included the BCIS uplift in terms of the inflationary figures that are forecasts at this time. So that's been done with regards to the future year's budgets, and we'll keep a very close eye on that going forward. With regards to the tenders that we've received, we are noticing an increase in prices, and that predominantly is down to the increase in the various commodities, including copper and steel. There's been quite a lot of work done by Scotland Excel on construction and construction inflation, and we're involved in that. in those discussions, and there's quite a lot of information coming out from Scotland Excel in particular. So keeping a very close eye on things with regards to how we go forward. We include optimism bias in our numbers at early stage estimating, which gives us hopefully a degree of flexibility as we move forward into the actual numbers that form the plan.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's quite reassuring. I just felt it's useful to highlight the risk that we're facing.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Do any other members wish to come in on this item? No. Okay, in that case, thank you, Paul. We will move to the recommendations. So we have 5 recommendations before us. 2.1 is for noting, and then 2.2, 2.5 are all for agreeing. Item 13, this is our ITC Business Systems Analyst Capital Programme Outturn Report, and this provides members with the information on here. And I've got Graham here, who is here to assist members should you have any questions. I'm just checking. Yep, we've got Graham online. Members, do you have any questions you want to raise on this report? Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it was just in relation to section 3.5 and also 3.7, but it was actually just to do with what degree of confidence we can have going forward. Obviously, there's been a number of projects that have been disrupted during this financial year due to, for example, a shortage of global components. But, I mean, by putting it back a year, is that saying, well, we know that shortage is going to be resolved, or is it just a kind of, well, that's all we can do? How confident are we that we're going to actually secure the parts we need to deliver what we've committed to? Thank you.
Graham, can you come in on that one, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Chair. I think the expectation is that the majority of the delays that we've been experiencing will be reduced significantly over the coming months. Originally, we were looking at somewhere in the region of almost 30 weeks for the provision of PCs and laptops. That's now down to 12. So we're seeing that kind of reduction in delay, and that was it was those delays that caused us most of the disruption. So the supply of components and the supply of devices is certainly much better than it was this time last year. So I'm confident that this year's programme will run with very little delay.
Thanks for that, Graham. And just as a wee follow-up, obviously a lot of our intentions as a council is to expand and develop our digital way of working. So what impacts will those, I suppose, the fact that this puts things back a year, what impact will that have on the way we deliver our services digitally?
Certainly, the delays that we experienced are primarily in and around creating those digital platforms to allow us to deliver those services. The key one is the creation of a customer portal so that we can put functional services online. That's certainly planned for implementation by September. So I'm fairly confident that once we get those platforms in place, that the rest of the programme should run without much issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. So I don't see anybody else looking to come in. So if we move to the recommendations, it is to note the ITC business class programme as set out in the appendix, and also note the carry forward of 0.493 million from the financial year. Are members happy to note those? Okay, thank you. That's us reached the end of the agenda. I don't have any other urgent business brought forward. I would just like to reiterate what I said at the beginning. I'm looking forward to taking the committee forward and working with each and every one of you. Both myself and the Vice Chair are open to speak with any member across as we move forward. So please come and get in touch if there's anything in between committees that you as members of this committee would like to see coming forward. But thank you very much for your time today and safe onward travel. Thank you.